The year was 2002, and the network's Saturday morning landscape was undergoing some of the biggest changes they'd seen in quite a long time. Kids WB was still going strong in the ratings. Fox Kids ended its 12-year run on September 7th and was replaced by the Fox Box, which later became 4Kids TV. Nick Jr. on CBS would become Nick on CBS. NBC would partner up with Discovery Kids to launch, well, Discovery Kids on NBC. And last but certainly not least of all, Disney's One Saturday Morning would become ABC Kids, and it would be one of the more unique ones of the bunch. What may have been a synergistic way to promote some of Disney Channel's original programming would actually prove to be rather beneficial, especially for those that didn't have cable or satellite TV at the time. However, toward the end of its run, the lineup would stagnate and have an unceremonious conclusion on August 27, 2011. So just how did this block start off with such great promise, only to then stall out at the very end? Well, that's just what we're gonna find out today in this video. I'm the MediaNutso, and it's time we take a dive into the rise and fall of ABC Kids. To fully understand how the block got to where it was, naturally, we must first look at where it all started. I already talked about much of this near the end of my One Saturday Morning video, so click here if you want to find out more. But to give you the recap, by the 2001 and 2002 season, Disney's One Saturday Morning was in a rough spot. Ratings had fallen to half of what they used to be, thanks in large part to the original short sketches and interstitials being discontinued the season before, and the competition was growing stiffer than ever before. Yes, the block did have a few popular shows like Recess, Timo Supremo, House of Mouse, and Lloyd in Space, but those weren't strong enough to compete with what Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Kids WB had at the time. Oh, and just to drive home how bad things had gotten, there was only one block that came in behind One Saturday Morning, and that was Fox Kids, which even then it was because that block was on its last legs as well, especially after Disney's purchase of the Fox Family Worldwide company. All the same, by the season's end, the block's future was looking pretty bleak. However, not everything during that year was all bad news. Along with the aforementioned shows, one of the few bright spots during that season was the introduction of a 1-hour sub-block called the Zoog Hour, or as it was billed on air,
Disney's One Saturday Morning, powered by Zoog.
Named after the Disney Channel's weekend block, Zoog Disney, this was where they showcased two of the Disney Channel's then most popular shows, Even Stevens and Lizzie McGuire. Yes, it was a synergistic way to promote the Disney Channel's programming, but it also acted as a gateway to new viewers who didn't have cable or satellite TV, and it would actually prove to be pretty effective, as the two shows performed quite well with viewers. So after seeing the strong performance of those two shows, plus looking for ways to reinvigorate the block, as well as probably wanting to cut costs on producing newer shows, the decision was made to completely overhaul the entire block, with a bigger focus on rerunning more of Disney Channel's original series, while also having a couple of new shows as well, but we'll get more into those in a bit. Of course, given that this was an ABC block, it still had to conform within the FCC's EI regulations. This is why for some of the shows, there were episodes or even whole seasons that didn't premiere on the block at all. Oh, don't you worry, we'll get more into how this affected the block later down the road. Also, as mentioned at the end of the One Saturday Morning video, just before the relaunch, ABC had gone ahead and renewed all of the shows on the previous lineup before the overhaul took effect, which was a rather silly and short-sighted move on their part. As a result, the newer seasons ended up premiering exclusively on Disney Channel and Toon Disney, though with the exception of one, but we'll get there. For the box bumpers and interstitials, they have it set in a massive CGI sports stadium, which looked far more visually appealing than watching kids playing in a park or open field with animated characters. And speaking of that, they continued to present the characters from the shows in that hybrid style, and this did lead to some fun interactions.
Play?
Can we get the ball going again?
Did you have a vision? Yeah, and I think the ball has indigestion.
Finally, as a little nod to the recently defunct Fox Kids, the new block would be christened as ABC Kids, which would officially make its premiere on Saturday, September 14th, 2002. So, now that we've got all of that laid out, let's head inside the stadium and witness what it had to offer. As already mentioned, the block's inaugural lineup was a mix of both reruns of several Disney Channel shows and some original ones. So let's start things off with talking about the latter, beginning with one of the few shows that jumped over from one Saturday morning, Recess. Yep, even though the show ended production in 2001, it continued to perform well in the ratings, to the point where it was still ABC's highest rated Saturday morning show. An interesting fact about this: because of its continued success and popularity, ABC was interested in reviving the show for a 7th season. However, Disney wasn't interested in doing that, as they felt there were already enough episodes to play in reruns, so those plans were ultimately scrapped. However, 3 episodes for that planned season had already been produced, so to ensure they weren't wasted, it was decided to string them together as one and released it as the direct-to-video sequel, Recess Taking the 5th Grade. It's honestly a shame that Season 7 didn't happen, as it would have been fun to see TJ and the gang tackle the 5th grade and all of the relatable conflicts that came from it. The only other animated show carried over was Teamo Supremo. Now, the most fascinating aspect about Season 2 was the way it was initially broadcast. See, when the season first began airing, new episodes premiered on both ABC and Toon Disney. But it wasn't as simple as it sounds. 11 of the episodes first aired on Toon Disney, while the other 9 premiered on ABC. Just to give a couple of examples, the episodes You Better Start Calling Me Chief and When Elements Unite first aired on Toon Disney, while the 2-part Play It Again Songstress and Going It Alone and Out to Dry premiered on ABC Kids. From there though, the 3rd season would go on to fully air on Toon Disney and officially conclude the series run. The last show to jump over was Lizzie McGuire, which is no surprise as it was partly the reason why ABC Kids came to be. Oddly enough, even Stevens didn't make the cut, despite being the other show that kicked off the relaunch. The answer here was pretty simple. Lizzie McGuire was the more popular of the 2 shows, so it made sense for just that show to make it over. Oh, don't worry, we'll be coming back to even Stevens later down the line. Alright, now that we've covered the holdovers, let's move on to the new entries. By which I mean the 2 Disney Channel shows that made the cut this year, both of which are animated: The Proud Family and Kim Possible. Their additions were pretty significant as they were the first original animated series to be produced for Disney Channel, especially with Kim Possible. Sure, The Proud Family was technically the first one, but that show was produced by an outside company, Jambalaya Studios, while Kim Possible was fully produced in-house by Walt Disney Television Animation. Lastly, there are the original shows that were made for ABC Kids, starting with Fillmore. Created by Scott M. Gimple, it revolved around Cornelius Fillmore, a reformed juvenile delinquent, and his partner Ingrid Third, who both work on the ex-middle school safety patrol, and they go about solving various crimes and mysteries that happen within and outside the school. If you couldn't tell already, the series was basically a spoof of various hard-boiled police dramas, particularly the ones from the 1970s, but with a more kid-friendly spin. Fillmore would be historically significant as it was the very last series that Walt Disney Television Animation would produce for ABC, and in fact for both network and syndicated television. You may wonder, why? See, during that time, the studio had undergone a restructuring as part of an effort to both streamline and improve the use of its resources, and as a result, the entire unit was transferred over to Disney Channel worldwide, where from then on, every new Disney animated series would only premiere on the Disney Channel, which would actually prove to be a good move in the long run. And as already mentioned, Kim Possible was the first series to get it going. Then we've got Power Rangers Wild Force. Now, this season does have an interesting history. Wild Force was the first series produced after Disney's purchase of the Fox Family Worldwide company. But pre-production on it had started before the purchase took place, and the first half of it aired on the final year of Fox Kids. But then it moved over to ABC Kids, where they would premiere the second half of it. Well, that's certainly an interesting way to start their era of the show. Finally, we have NBA Inside Stuff. Essentially, it was a recap and analysis show, where the hosts would review the games from any past week, had top plays and special moments, and would sometimes include interviews with some of the top NBA players. Originally, it aired on NBC from 1990 all the way to 2002, when the network's exclusivity contract expired and the show would move over to ABC, where it would be placed at the very end of the block and would greatly affect its overall ratings. No joke, the show didn't receive very good ratings during its entire run on the block, even though it did act as a good transition to the network's sporting program. Interestingly, there were more shows that were going to air on the block, but never did. Apparently, they were going to premiere the latest season of Digimon, Digimon Frontier, as a part of the block on November 30th. But it ended up not happening, and instead, the show would end up airing during the final season of Disney's Animation Weekdays, formerly Disney's 1-2. When ABC Kids welcomed viewers to the stadium, it ended up performing pretty well. Sure, it wasn't exactly a monster hit, but it did succeed in reinvigorating ABC's Saturday morning lineup and making it a viable competitor to the other network's Saturday morning blocks going forward. In early 2003, Power Rangers Wild Force would conclude on January 11th, and the next season, Power Rangers Ninja Storm, the first season to be fully produced under Disney, would premiere over a month later on February 15th. Then, beginning in the 2003 and 2004 season, Timo Supremo and one showing of Recess would be cut from the block, and on September 20th, Lilo and Stitch the series and That's So Raven would officially make their premiere. Now, what's interesting about the former's debut is that it would be the only Disney Channel series to debut on the block first before it did on the Disney Channel, which it would 3 weeks later on October 12th. None of their other shows afterwards would get this treatment. In early 2004, there wouldn't be too much of a shakeup with the schedule, as Power Rangers Ninja Storm would end its run on St. Valentine's Day, and Power Rangers Dino Thunder would premiere the following week on February 21st. However, some of the most significant change-ups would come by the fall. On August 28th, near the start of the 2004 and 2005 season, Recess, the one and final series to be carried over from the One Saturday Morning years, would air for the final time and officially leave the network after almost 7 successful years the following week. In its place would be a second episode of That's So Raven. However, this wouldn't last for too long, as on September 25th, Phil of the Future would make its block debut. The other big change-up happened just 17 days earlier, when ABC debuted the new weekend morning edition of their daytime talk show, Good Morning America. As a result, ABC Kids was cut down to a 4-hour block and will remain that way up through 2010. Lastly, both Kim Possible and Power Rangers would be preempted in several markets a few times due to ongoing sporting events. Given that those shows always aired near the tail end of the block, this isn't much of a surprise. Early 2005 would see even crazier shakeups in the lineup. Of course, Power Rangers Dino Thunder would conclude and Power Rangers SPD premiered the following week, but as a sudden last-minute change, Fillmore was replaced by Even Stevens. Yep, over 2 years later, and the show finally makes its debut on the block. Better late than never, I suppose. Also, with Fillmore's removal, the last of the original animated shows have gone, and the block would now be mainly Disney Channel shows. Next, Kim Possible would temporarily leave the block on January 8th and was replaced by the Jetix series Witch the following week on the 15th. However, its time would be short-lived as it only lasted over 1 month on the block, and then on March 26th, Kim Possible would reclaim its spot. The 2005 and 2006 season would start off with both Lizzie McGuire and Even Stevens being replaced by 2 newcomers, The Buzz on Maggie and The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on September 17th. Also, they were originally going to premiere the Jetix series Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go on September 25th, but for one reason or another, it didn't happen.
Today, ABC Kids is declaring our first annual Hot Snow Day.
What are we waiting for?
Let's get back to the ABC Kids Crush or Be Crushed Marathon, right here on ABC.
Enter if you dare, for a rocking Saturday sure to scare. Let out the scream big and hearty, cause it's time again for the ABC Kids Haunted House Party.
Join us!
We'll be back with more festive fun as the ABC Kids Jolly Holiday Bash continues.
Then later, on January 28, 2006, The Buzz on Maggie would leave and The Emperor's New School would premiere in its place. Then, almost 2 months later, Power Rangers SPD concluded and Power Rangers Mystic Force premiered on March 11th. Jumping forward to September 8th, at the start of the 2006 and 2007 season, the schedule would see more shakeups. Both the Proud Family and Lilo and Stitch the series will be replaced by The Replacements and Hannah Montana respectively, as well as a second showing of That's So Raven. Also, Kim Possible would finally leave the block for good after September 9th and was replaced by a second episode of Power Rangers. There were big changeouts with the bumpers and interstitials too, as the original sports stadium would be supplanted by a concert stadium, which would remain for the rest of the block's run. Honestly, that was actually a good thing to change. After 4 seasons with the same motif, it was starting to get a little stale, so it was at least a nice refresh. By the way, better hope you're big fans of these shows, because from this point onward, with the exception of Power Rangers, the entire lineup would mainly be reruns of these 5 shows, and even then, it would only be the same few select episodes. Now, you may wonder, why did the schedule just suddenly stagnate like that? Recall, these shows were chosen because the network felt they were best suited to fit within the FCC's EI guidelines. However, there's a bit more to it than you think. See, by that time, the FCC had laid down a set of new guidelines, one of which, made over a year earlier, mandated that the networks had to include an EI watermark during the broadcast in order to signify that the shows were educational. Now, in fairness, ABC Kids did get creative with it by having the logo bouncing up into a graduation cap with the insignia on it. Also, when it came to selecting which episodes would get to air, the process was conducted by not just the network executives, but also by each of the show's respective educational consultants. And naturally, they went with the ones that best suited the educational mandate. Afterwards though, there wouldn't be any more new additions made to the lineup, most likely out of contentment for what was already on there. All of that being said though, it wasn't too bad for the first 2 years, as like many of the other shows that came before, it did provide a more accessible way to watch these shows outside of the Disney Channel. Plus, if there was one upside to all of it, it's that the blog did provide these shows with a second home once they were no longer playing on Disney Channel or Toon Disney XD. Anyway, getting back to the schedule, the other change in the lineup came on August 18th, when NBA Access, formerly NBA Inside Stuff, aired for the last time on the block. The reason behind this was pretty simple. The show always aired at the very tail end of the block, and as stated earlier, it wasn't exactly getting very good ratings, so it was easy to pull it from the schedule. Also, here's an interesting fact. Cory in the House was planned to premiere during the fall of 2007, but for one reason or another, it didn't happen. For the 2007 and 2008 season and beyond, as already stated, the schedule would stick with those 5 shows and the same episode rotations for the remainder of its run, with Power Rangers being the only show to continue airing new seasons, with Operation Overdrive, Jungle Fury, RPM, and a reversion of the original Mighty Morphin airing during that time. Now the former would be rather significant, as it would be the very last season that Disney would produce, as well as being the only one to not air on Jetix in the US, as that had transitioned to being Disney XD by the time it premiered. As for the latter, it would only cover 32 of the original 60 episodes produced, and were edited to tone down the violence, while also adding in some random comic book style graphics and effects into certain scenes, and had an updated logo. Following the show's cancellation, Saban Brands, the original creator and producer of the series, would buy back the entire franchise from Disney for $43 million, and went on to relaunch it on Nickelodeon with Power Rangers Samurai. And then years later would sell it to Hasbro, but that's another story. With Power Rangers' departure, the block would be trimmed down to just 3 hours, and from there, it would basically just go through the motions for the remainder of its time. And as you might imagine, viewers soon grew very tired of seeing the same episodes over and over again. Eventually, even the network executives gave up on it. And so, in March of 2010, ABC announced that they would no longer offer any educational programming to their affiliates, and instead made an arrangement with Litton Entertainment to supply the new programming, which would launch on September 3rd, 2011, as part of a new block called ABC Weekend Adventure, but it was later renamed Litton's Weekend Adventure before it debuted. ABC Kids would air for the final time on August 27th, 2011, and it was a pretty unceremonious conclusion. It just ran the same programming it had for 4 years, and that was really it. It's honestly pretty sad that it went out the way it did, because it also marked the end of Disney's 14-year run of providing animated shows for ABC, and it really should have been something more special. But on the other hand, it was understandable why they made this decision. Times had changed. Kids weren't tuning in to Saturday mornings as much as they did years before or in the same way, thanks to cable networks like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and of course Disney Channel providing non-educational content across the week, making the big networks' offerings less enticing. It wasn't that what they were airing was terrible, it just wasn't a huge priority anymore. But even despite this, the block did enjoy a good long run, and was successful in accomplishing what it was meant to do, refreshing ABC's Saturday morning lineup at a point when it really needed it, and it opened the door for new viewers to many of Disney Channel's original shows. All in all, ABC Kids was a very entertaining and fun Saturday morning block. Yes, it grew stale during its final years, but overall, it brought a lot of fun energy that was sorely needed, and it was especially a godsend for those that didn't have cable, as it helped introduce newer viewers to many of Disney Channel's older and newer programming. Yeah, call it synergistic if you may, but it was the fun kind of synergy that was beneficial for both the viewers and the studio and network. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video and that it gave you some great insight into the history of this blog. If you want to be alerted to catch some more, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, please leave a like on this video and comment your thoughts down below. Until then, this is MediaNutso saying thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.
Saturdays on ABC.